Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 2024 Comp and Benefits Survey report for our town hall here. I'm Jason Eckert, the Chief Operating Officer for Vision Serve Alliance. And today we're going to talk a little bit about our Comp and Benefits survey. So basically, you'll have four presenters today: Jason, Rita, Wendy, and Denise. So Rita is from Not-for-Profit Compensation Associates, and she is the consultant who pulls together a terrific amount of research for us regarding the compensation and benefits and the services that people provide at the not-for-profit agencies that work with Vision Serve Alliance. Wendy Himes, as you all know, is our Director of Membership and Conferences here at Vision Serve Alliance, and really plays an active role working with Rita to pull this all together. This is one of your really significant and important membership benefits. So Wendy plays quite an active role there. I know you all know her. Denise Jess is the CEO of this Wisconsin Council for the Blind and Vision Impaired. Denise Jess is a board member of Vision Serve Alliance and very active in helping us continue to move forward our diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility efforts. And some of those things are reflected here in our survey. So again, let me just welcome you all. We'll have a good amount of time to go through this information and provide some assistance for you folks. So we have the purpose of our meeting today. That's the slide that's on your screen. The purpose of our meeting today is really just to highlight some of the insights from this year's compensation and benefits survey. We will do that with Rita and some ideas that Wendy and I and Denise will also share. We're going to sort of outline a little bit the background of the survey and how you can use some of the data to evaluate your organization's workforce strategies. And lastly, we'll see if we can get some Q&A in if we have enough time, and we'll close trying to answer some specific questions of data points that Rita might be able to have for you, things related to diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility Denise might want to point out, or things related to how the whole process works that Wendy and I might be able to report out. We'll have a whole bunch of resources that'll be helpful at the end, some places where you can go to take a look at some of the things that we talk about, referral things and of that nature. So we have the next slide is why do we conduct our surveys here? Sorry, I lost my train of thought here. So that's Wendy. That's how come it's Wendy. Go ahead, Wendy. I apologize.
No worries, no worries. So the purpose for conducting this survey is to really ultimately build awareness in our community, our blind and visually impaired community, about our collective support for employees and human resource management. We have been doing this survey since 2010. This is our 8th time conducting the survey. We do this survey every other year, so in even calendar years. And Nonprofit Compensation Associates has been with us from the very beginning. They helped formulate this survey, and they continue to work with us to modify and improve the survey every year. So we really would like to thank Rita Haronian and Nonprofit Compensation Associates for their work together with us. We'd also like to thank our collaborative partners who help fund the survey every year, and that's NIB, the National Industries for the Blind, and NAEPB, the National Association for the Employment of People Who Are Blind. So again, thank you to our partners who help fund doing this tremendous work. Ultimately, our goal is to create a national employment standard which helps unify our industry, and that unity continues. Having better standards will help foster growth in our industry. So again, we are stronger together.
So why is this survey unique? So this is really a terrific benefit from Vision Serve Alliance. We don't have access to other surveys of not-for-profit organizations that specifically cater to providing services to folks who are blind and vision impaired have that kind of disability as their main focus. So you'll see on the slide here, collaboration agencies, we're small incidence disability. So as a result of that, we really have to work together. That's the whole purpose of Vision Serve Alliance, as many people know, is that we all just work together. And this becomes sort of a common voice that we can use about the services that we provide, about and how our human resources, how our workforces internally are set up. Again, we are a small incidence disability. We're talking about around 130 to 150 members of VSA. We're talking about, maybe 300 to 350 organizations across the whole country that provide these services. So we really have to pull together and have some understanding of exactly what we do. No other survey exists, again, that has employment related to these topics, our employees in the BVI community. The survey is really an authentic source and resource available. It's really, again, the only one that provides this look at this niche community that we have. And it's really here to address some critical issues. I want people to think about the results here of things that are related to the broader community. Some of our job titles are hard to secure. Professionals that do the work that we need are short-staffed. So we have to really understand who we are, what job titles we have, what training our professionals have, how we move forward. And surveys like this will help us create some strong standards. We get to say this amount of agencies across the country have this amount of people working in this amount, this job title with these folks. So it really becomes something that we can learn from, that we can create together to advocate for ourselves and to help move the community forward. It's a reflection of all of us. I believe we had 88 respondents. I know Rita will talk about that. And that's a pretty good resource sample size. Of course, we'd always like it to be bigger. I thank those who participated if you're one of the 88. And also, I would be grateful next year if you weren't, to please sign up and go ahead and take the survey, because that really makes a large difference. The larger our sample size, the more accurate our information will be. Okay, and I believe for this, we go to Rita. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, we're going to show some information about the participating organizations, just to give you a sense of the range of the organizations that participate in the survey in terms of their financial size. Here, there were 88 participants this year. Altogether, these organizations employ more than 10,000 employees. So some are very small and some are quite large. We compiled compensation data for 17 different positions, executive level, director level, professional level positions, and more than 1,000 individual salaries are represented in the results in the report. It's all what the information that's published is compiled information. There isn't anything that can be identified as coming from a particular organization or referring to a particular employee at an organization. So we take the issue of confidentiality very seriously, and that's something I want to make sure is clear when we're asking people to participate in the survey. So you can see here, there are some very small organizations, and with, for example, annual budgets, annual operating expenses of less than 2.5 million. These are the categories that we use to break the data out. And some with annual operating expenses of more than 15 million. And one of the things that the survey makes clear is, for example, executive pay, particularly the executive director or the CEO, whatever the top executive person is called at an organization. Pay for executives do tend to track closely with the financial size of the organization. So depending on what annual budget group or operating expenses group an organization is, we are not surprised to see the pay for the top executive person vary quite widely. And you can also see within these 4 categories that the number of full-time plus part-time employees that they have varies quite widely also. So the demographics of our survey participants encompasses a really diverse group of organizations. I want to say it tells you here average annual budget here, and at the bottom you can see the median of all organizations is about 4.4 million. And the other thing that's not on the slide that I want to say quickly is 86% of the employees at our participants work full-time, 14% work part-time. So by far, most of these employees are full-time employees. And on the next slide.
Rita, it's Jason. I'm just going to chime in and
Yes.
say it's a really wonderful description of how diverse our community is in
Yeah.
size and dollars and salaries and employees, especially when we consider some of our folks who are affiliated with Ability One and may have really large agencies with large
Right.
revenue and large employees. So it's a terrific snapshot you gave us. Thank you for pulling
Yeah,
that data for
good.
us.
And when the survey was first designed, always the intention was to provide something useful to organizations regardless of their size. So it's not going to cover all of the jobs at a large organization, but it's meant to cover the jobs either that are found at many different kinds of organizations or sizes of organizations, and in particular to cover jobs for which compensation information was just not available elsewhere. So the professional level jobs, the original survey focused on professional level jobs that was just not possible to find data for. And over the years, we've added quite a number of jobs to the list that the survey looks at. So here's another way of looking at our participants in terms of the field of service. And again, it's quite a varied list. You can see some are represented much more strongly than others. And in the compensation pages of the survey, compensation data is broken out by the financial size of the organization, by the number of employees at the organization, by field of service, also by a geographic factor to group organizations that are in areas of the country that are similar in terms of their employment markets. The field of service breakout is there. I think it's important to give people an idea about the diversity of the participants, and on any particular page of the compensation reports, you can see what kinds of organizations contributed information for this job. I don't usually suggest that people look at the field of service and look at the pay levels by field of service so much for making pay decisions. It's more for, as I said, perspective about what kinds of organizations are here and where the data is coming from. So it is a really diverse group of organizations.
Okay. So understanding jobs and titles and duties, what we hope is that just seeing some of the job titles, which I believe will be next, just seeing some of the job titles here will help organizations sort of perhaps align job titles, duties, and qualifications, right? We still use a lot of different titles for people who do very similar work. So this isn't a panacea to do that, but it's a process for us to start thinking about it. A universal standards of job titles, salaries, benefits, this would strengthen our recruitment efforts. Again, we're not there yet, but in our discussion today, we just wanted to promote the way that a survey like this could be used. If we had a little bit more data, or we started to aggregate our data over the years, we might be able to start cross-referencing and making sure that the same job title exists at the same agency at a similar level of pay, probably adjusted for location, and that would help us professionalize the field. So I just wanted to focus on that a little bit. Again, advocacy efforts as well. If we're presenting our agencies forward to advocate for basically more funding services, the titles that we use in the positions would be helpful. If I call them a job developer and you call them an employment specialist, I call them a teacher of the vision impaired and you call them a teacher of the blind, this gets confusing to the folks that we're actually soliciting funding from for the services. Again, we're not there yet. I just wanted to introduce in this discussion the idea that this could start to illuminate that for us and the importance of this survey for these reasons, so people can really understand the reason why we're asking you to take such a survey. Professionalism is again strengthened by all of this, and then we can start to create what I would call a clinical standard, a training standard, a medical standard, you know, a care standard, whatever you wish. But these are the things that I wanted to suggest and put forward. So here we are. I kind of spoke to this already. I'm not going to run through all of this, but here are different categories of job titles that we tried to pull together that were reflected. And they're job titles that exist on the executive level, like our chief operating officer, our CEO, our program officer, our director level jobs, you know, and then some of the other jobs for professional level. And we did add 2 jobs here for this survey. One was the job developer / employment specialist, and the other one I believe was a human resources. These are the job titles. They might help organizations structure some of their human resources processes by using this as an example.
So our next slide is really another reason why this survey is incredibly useful to nonprofit HR directors and to leaders at our nonprofits here in our community. It helps you benchmark, attract, and recruit and retain your well-qualified professional and support staff. You know, how do you know if you're paying enough to keep that, you know, that person that is an essential part of your staff? This will help you. This survey will help give you that information because it is tied with the geographical locator for your city and state. It's also, this survey is incredibly useful for you when you go to file your taxes. Those of you, many on the call, I'm sure have filled out the 990 or have been involved with your staff who does this for you. You are required to report your compensation for especially for the highest paid executives at your organization. You're also required to say any bonuses and incentives. Those all must be filled out on your 990. So agencies must carefully justify all the compensation as reasonable and not excessive. So this survey provides you an excellent source to cite in the figures that you are declaring on your annual 990. This you can be confident that there is transparency. So you can see the results from each organization who participated in this survey while their privacy is protected. So it's really very useful for meeting your IRS requirements. As the list of jobs was mentioned, the list of jobs that's covered on this survey really covers almost everybody's entire staff. At least that's our goal. And you're welcome to suggest new positions. We always get comments from people if they need us to include new positions, as we included these 2 new positions this year.
Okay, I'm going to go through just a few slides that pulled out some information from this year's survey. The question about remote, hybrid, and in-person work, of course, is something that we didn't think much about in 2010. But since the pandemic particularly has been a question that many employers of all kinds are dealing with, So here we have four categories of employees, each one on a line. And then across, we have the information from 2022 and 2024 both to show what percent of organizations said that their employees in each category work mostly remote or have a hybrid combination or mostly in person. And there isn't a dramatic change here from 2022 to 2024. That's the main thing that was interesting to me when we were really in the midst of the most acute phase of the pandemic and the whole way people were working. There was so much upheaval. Of course, we really wondered, is this hybrid work situation going to continue? Are more and more people going to be working remotely? Of course, depending on their job, what's going to happen? So just based on what we're seeing in the last couple of years, a hybrid employee work situation is quite common. So far, it's not going anywhere. And certainly there are more people working in person than remotely, but there are still employees working remotely. My sort of sense from anecdotal information I hear is that organizations that started having remote employees during the pandemic in many cases have continued to do that if they found that it works all right for them. So it will be interesting to see what happens along these lines in the future. But for the past couple of years, it's been a pretty steady situation. It's seems to be here for the time being, at least. We ask about turnover, which is always an interesting sort of indicator, one of several indicators in the survey about just what the economic conditions are. When employment is high, when unemployment is high, then we see voluntary turnover going down. There aren't so many opportunities elsewhere for employees, but when unemployment is quite low, then sometimes turnover tends to go up. And so again, we're looking at 2022 and 2024 both. And there aren't very dramatic differences here from one survey year to the next. People leaving for higher pay elsewhere tends to be at the top of the list in every survey that I have done that's looked at this kind of question. People leaving for personal reasons other than a geographic move, that tended to be higher in the most acute phase of the pandemic, when people would either sometimes find a way to stay home to look after family members, or if their children were home and doing remote school, that's gone down somewhat. People do leave because they're essentially getting a promotion, they're getting a higher level job somewhere else, various geographic moves, other issues are mentioned. Pursuing higher education took a big jump from 2022 to 2024, relatively. I mean, still not a large percentage, but quite a bit higher than it was in 2022. I don't have a reason for that. But that's what was reported to us in 2024. For the most part, this what we're seeing is similar to 2 years ago. And this is a new question that I think was inspired by pandemic-related conditions, particularly employers finding it challenging to fill new open positions or to keep employees in positions, keep really valuable employees. So we got some suggestions about asking what are organizations doing in regards to employee engagement, and with the idea that increasing employee engagement was a positive way to, for example, prevent turnover, but also just maintain a positive work situation for everybody. So the first question was, have you done anything recently along these lines? And 81% of our survey participants said, yes, we've done at least one of these things. And then we had a list of efforts, various kinds of efforts that they may have taken or may be taking. And of course, many of them checked more than one box in the options list. So many employers, certainly the large majority, according to our survey, have been paying attention to this issue and doing at least one of these things in order to increase and encourage employee engagement.
It's Rita, it's Jason again. I just want to interrupt because, we do experience such a shortage of some of our professionals that I just think it's quite encouraging to see that, that a good 80% of our organizations are paying attention to that and trying to keep their employees engaged, because when they lose certain professionals, they have a really, really tough time getting them back. So I
Right.
just thought that was something real positive to pull out. I have no idea, but I would speculate, maybe in the private sector or in a different community, it may not be that high. But it really is an important effort that our agencies are making, that once they secure one of those employees that are hard to get, that they work hard to keep them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was struck by the 81% who said that they're doing something. So this is really on people's radar screens.
Yeah.
Clearly. Okay, we're going to look quickly at retirement benefits that were reported by our survey participants. 89% of them have some kind of retirement plan. So you'll see the chart on the left here, the bottom says no retirement plan. So that's the 11%. 89% have at least one plan, and in many cases, more than one. So a TSA could be a 401k or a 403b, for example, is by far the most common kind of retirement plan that's offered. IRA, SEP IRA, simple IRA, there are some, but fewer. Other defined contribution, fewer. Defined benefit plan, that for years now, that's become quite unusual, though there are some, and a few miscellaneous others. So the TSAs are the most common. And most of the organizations that do have a retirement plan have a plan in which both the employer and the employee contribute. So the chart on the right, you'll see that third line, employer contribute / employee may contribute. So in that case, you can get contributions from both employer and employee. The most common way that people administer this is employer match, which means that employees are making contributions and the organization matches either all of it or in some cases some of it. Depending on their policies, it could go either way, but both the employee and the employer is putting in. Relatively few have just an employee contribution, and also relatively few just have just an employer contribution. And in most cases, by far, so when we went further and asked those who do make contributions to the retirement plan, which is certainly most of these organizations, 92% of them report that they contribute based on a percentage of each employee's salary. So for example, they may match contributions that represent up to 3% or 4% or 5%, whatever the number is of the employee's salary. And the range of what that percentage that could be contributed is was reported as 1% on the low end, 11% on the high end. The average was 4.6%. So 4%, 5% was the rate of employee salary contribution that is in the middle of what was reported in terms of these retirement contributions. So here, this chart is looking at changes in pay levels at various jobs over 4 years. So I went back to 2020 here and calculated an annualized pay increase. So for example, the first line for the top executive person, 6.85%. So to get from the 2020 average pay to the 2024 average pay, there would have been an increase of 6.85% each year over those 4 years. So that's what the number means. And then looking at each group, the executive group, you'll see in the column on the right, that number is for the executive group overall, then the director level group overall, and the professional level group overall. So I want to say quickly, jobs that were new for the survey along the line, of course, are not here because we didn't have them in 2020. Some jobs have changed a little bit. Sometimes the job title has changed. So those were not included. Only jobs that were in the survey were the same job in 2020, 2022, 2024 were looked at. And I don't think that the number there in the middle for each job is so significant. For example, vice president of manufacturing / operations, that's a lower percent than what we see in the other executive level jobs. My guess is that's probably more because we don't get quite so much data for that job. It's a executive level job that's specific to a subset of survey participants. We don't get a whole lot, but overall, if you look on the right for the average annualized pay increase, it's relatively consistent, a little higher on the executive side, but not that much. And also relatively in line with what we've been told about salary increase budgets overall for survey participants. So I want to say really quickly, in 2024 survey, the median overall salary increase budget that was reported was 3%. That's pretty much in line with what I'm seeing in other surveys. It did go up to 4% when a year or two ago, when it seemed like there was even more pressure on employers to hang on to people and kind of wondering what they had to do to hire and retain people. In this survey, the 2024 survey, 88% of our survey participants said that they are giving regular pay increases during their current fiscal year. So they are planning on regular pay increases. Overwhelmingly, there were a few that weren't, but by far most of them were. In terms of how they look at salary increases, merit / performance is the most common sort of factor that they consider. That was noted by more than 2/3. Also across the board increases, cost of living increases, noted by about 1/3 each. About 1/4 of them look at external labor market information, such as survey data, for example, to identify jobs for which perhaps they aren't paying as much as whatever the prevailing rate might be. Internal job equity is another factor. People look at the jobs at their organizations internally to see how jobs compare and to make sure that jobs that are similar in terms of responsibility are paid along the same lines, to make sure that within a department, jobs within a department are the pay relates reasonably to the various responsibilities of the jobs in that department. Also, some organizations look at length of service. That's not as common, but there are some that do that. So the whole question about pay increases, I think is a really interesting one. This slide is just to sort of summarize and give you an idea of what organizations have been doing based on the survey data over the last few years. I want to say also really quickly, 60% of our survey participants this year report that they have a formal policy allowing for some sort of incentive / bonus pay for their executive directors, CEOs. And in the last 12 months reported in the survey, 40% of the people in that job actually did receive some sort of bonus or incentive pay. So the policy doesn't necessarily mean that each person is going to receive that pay, but 60% of them, so certainly more than a half, have a policy that that can allow for variable pay for their top executive person. And not quite a half, but pretty close, actually did receive that kind of pay in the last year.
Denise Jess here, and I'm going to talk with you for a few minutes about the diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility data that we have been collecting for 2 cycles now with the survey. So in 2022, for the first time, there were questions added to the survey that focused on asking about staffing and across a wide variety of dimensions of diversity, from race and ethnicity to gender identification, sexual orientation. And then we collected that data again this year, so it gave us both a baseline and a comparison. Additionally, there were questions added that looked at actions taken, where folks taking, starting DEIA working groups, were they looking at policy changes through a DEIA lens, were they making budget decisions and including budget items along the DEIA perspective. And so we got that data in 2022. We were able to make comparisons in 2024. We see this as a really important aspect in addition to all the rest of the information that the survey gathers, because our funders and our donors are asking questions about how we are interfacing with the DEIA space, knowing that the people that we serve, vision loss is something that touches any and all of us. And so how are we doing in serving our populations? And then does our workforce mirror the folks that we serve? So we want to be able to honestly and transparently respond to those questions from funders and donors. The other thing that collecting the data does is it allows us to make comparisons. I know it was really interesting to me to look at where we grew from 2022, where we still had work to do, and then how my organization compares to my fellow organizations around the country who are serving people who are blind and low vision. And I also use this data personally to look at how we're doing compared to the wider nonprofit sector, and how my organization is doing among our local partner organizations. So it's incredibly useful to me personally, and hopefully useful to other folks as well. The 2024 results really help us see where we have made strides in the last couple of years, and also point out where we have work yet to do. So a couple of things that stood out for us as improvements or places where we as an industry have grown that are exciting. We have seen a 7% increase in the number of executive directors or CEOs who are blind or low vision. So that went from 11 to 18%. we saw 3% fewer organizations who said that they weren't doing anything yet in the DEIA space. So excellent to see that decrease. And then a 4% increase in organizations who are saying that they have begun doing some work in the DEI space. 11% more answered that we have been putting a standing line in our budgets for aspects of DEIA. I know for my organization, as an example, we have a budget line now for interpreter and translation services for all of our events and direct service. And then lastly, a couple of other areas where we've seen growth is that there are more organizations who have internal working groups focused on DEIA, and that we've seen an increase across the board in organizations who are considering and looking through an equity lens when creating and updating policies. And of course, because this work is ever evolving, we still have a lot of room as an industry to grow. So we still see that only about 1% of our executive directors and CEOs are people of color or folks who identify as Latinx or Hispanic. And that's the same from 2022. We also are noting that fewer organizations indicate that their boards or CEOs are involved in the DEI work, or have noted that they are spending less resources on DEIA training. And so through some of our anecdotal observations, things that we hear from organizations, one of the reasons for that spending less is that during the pandemic, there was money flowing into some of our organizations through ARPA funding and payroll protection funding. And some of that got used for DEIA work. And now that funding is no longer available, there's less flexibility in budget for DEIA work. And we have to work harder to figure out how we continue to build it into our budgets. We also note that DEIA work, depending on where we are in the country, has been weaponized and in some cases legislated against. And so that causes a significant hurdle or barrier or even fear-based for doing the work. Yet the work is so incredibly vital for us to build robust and attract high-quality workforce and really serve the diverse population of people who are blind and low vision. There are some awesome resources that VSA has put together, and I want to thank my fellow IDEAL committee members for helping to build that robust and curated resource list, and it's available on the VSA member portal. So I invite you to check that out. And I also invite you to get involved with the IDEAL committee, and you can reach out to me to learn more about that. So Jason, I'm going to turn it to you to finish us up.
Excellent. Thank you. So I think we're good on time. So I'm just going to sort of restate a little bit at the end, some time for Q&A, but just restate the importance of this information is really crucial in building stronger, healthier agencies. And that is that is the mission of Vision Serve Alliance. Mission of Vision Serve Alliance is to help its membership agencies, really grow and be strong, healthy organizations. And when they are those strong, healthy organizations, it's our belief that they provide greater quality, better, more services to folks living with blindness and low vision, right? So that's how we tie it together. And this type of information is really critical in helping your agency be stronger and healthier. Without this information, you have less opportunity to put in certain things that allow that organization to grow internally in that way. Externally, it's community strength, right? If all of our organizations are stronger and healthier and serving more people, that enhances the BVI community, and that enhances BVI service. So again, these things just build on each other, they multiply, and it really emphasizes the importance of information like this. So I wanted to take a moment at the conclusion here to emphasize that. I believe we do have a little bit of time for some questions for any of us.
We did have one question come in from Ellie, and her question is, what was the range of turnover percentages? I'm not sure if Rita has that information
Yeah,
at her fingertips.
Yeah, I do. There's information on page 11 of the report, so I'm looking at it right now. So we separate out turnover by for full-time employees and for part-time employees. And voluntary turnover is the kind of turnover that causes the most concern. Involuntary turnover, meaning an organization decides to terminate an employee, that is certainly less frequent, and because that's the organization's decision, it's not as much of a concern. So full-time turnover, the overall number that voluntary turnover that we got was 13%. And it ranged, depending on the size of the organization, 9% for the smaller organizations, 15% for the larger, but overall 13%. For part-time employees, it was just a little lower. It was overall 10%. And I have to say that those numbers are, compared to other surveys that I look at, those numbers are relatively low. So comparatively, your organizations are doing really well in terms of holding on to their employees. And I was happy to see that.
Thank you. That was really a good thing to know.
Yeah.
I'll just make maybe a comment, and Rita, you can respond. When you were talking about the places where we increase the salaries of our employees, I just wanted to note that the two salaries in our direct service providers that went up the most were the salaries where we have the most shortages, and the salaries where the job titles where the anecdotally, until your information, the members of VSA would tell us they're struggling to hold on to staff and they're having to raise salaries to keep staff. And that was in our VRTs and our certified orientation and mobility specialists. Those were the highest ones. And also in our low vision clinics, your low vision clinic directors were very high. And these are, especially the O&Ms and the VRTs, very, very hard specialties to hold and to keep. And anecdotally, people say, oh my gosh, I have to keep paying more and more to hold on to them. It's nice to see the actual research match the anecdotal stories that we hear. That's what we hope our research does. And I was grateful to hear that. It speaks to the fact as well that when we're recruiting for these positions, which we all are on a general level, we can say the salaries for these positions tend to go up at a high rate, right? Comparatively speaking, that gives us a talking point for some of our recruiting to get people into college programs that train for these professions, and to express in some of our professional associations that are trying to increase a membership, of which some people on this call are really active. It's a very valuable piece of information to back up our anecdotal experiences of this.
Ellie, you have a follow-up question.
I have a different question. So I was very interested in the internal and external impact of the information that you were talking about, Jason, and making a case for not only reporting to, responding to the survey, but also to draw inferences from it for your particular organization. And I was wondering, are there anecdotal stories that have come out of this survey? Did people volunteer any kind of insights as to how they're using the material or how they benefited from having the material?
We have received a few
please, Wendy, go ahead.
testimonials from our member CEOs about how useful having this data, gives them data to take back to their board of directors as they're creating their budgets. This is the time of year when everybody is thinking about next year's. Many of our organizations have fiscal years that are starting up, and the budgets are being set. So this gives them ammunition for setting those budgets in a very data-driven manner.
So perhaps they're taking the information to their boards of directors, not just to use it for their IRS returns, but to actually show their boards of directors a connection between successful organizations and some of the decisions that are reflected in the statistics.
Ellie, this is Denise. I can verify that from my perspective as an executive director. I use this survey regularly to help educate my board about the salary ranges and benefits that are useful and appropriate for our industry.
That's really, since I'm on the membership committee, that's why where I'm heading with this, Wendy. In terms of marketing, other things that are valuable about belonging to Vision Serve Alliance. But I also wanted to ask about the DEIA piece, the ideal piece that Denise was talking about, because I think that a lot of organizations I would like to know, I guess I'll put it that way. I'd like to know how many organizations are looking within their own communities to grow their employee base by participating in some of the innovations that higher education has taken in order to make it more accessible for especially students of color or people who come from a lower socioeconomic level of advantageousness. What should I say? And because it seems to me that if you can create a ladder within your organization, you not only know who you're hiring, and you can see that that person's developing in the way that you want your future professional staff to be. It just seems like there are expanded opportunities for using this information, especially in the DEI space. Does it make any sense what I'm talking about?
Yeah, Ellie, Denise, it's Denise again. Yeah, it makes 100% sense to me. And I don't know, and Rita, you're much closer to the data than I am. I don't know that we really have any questions that help ascertain that. But my mind is cooking on potential questions that we can consider for the next survey about recruitment efforts and development efforts and succession planning. That might be really, really useful and interesting.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that subject. And then if nobody else has their hand raised, I do have another question.
We'll give you one more and then it'll be time for us to wrap up. Go for it, Ellie.
Okay, yeah, this is a quickie too. One of the things that also interests me a lot because of my role as the manager of the Accreditation Council for AER is I'm always trying to tie our standards to best practices, to especially best management practices. And so is there any connection currently or that could be planned to make that kind of link? Because I really would like every one of the standards that we have to be tied to something like that. So it's not just us making up the stuff that we want people to jump through another hurdle about. So I'll just leave that as a thought.
Yeah, it's Jason, maybe that's something we can circle back around on. I mean, these are things, I'm a little new to this game, so I'm going to leave it to Wendy and Rita, but these are things that we've ascertained from the community that we've put in to the survey that, that we have been expanding it. But as well as I do, better than I do, standardization in some of these things, I'm touting this here, but we're in the very, very beginning stages. But we can look to tie it to a standing resource, if that's some of your feedback and you think that would be helpful. I would have no objection to that, but that would probably be a conversation for me, Rita, Wendy, and you, just to make sure that we're doing that in an appropriate fashion.
Maybe
some others.
Yeah, I would really like to keep that open.
That's what I was touting here in this call and trying to close the loop on that this has greater value than just figuring out, an IRS statement, that this is a tool that we would be able to use in the community to build our agencies internally and to build the community, sort of externally. So if I'm going to tout it, I got to put my money where my mouth is, right?
Yeah,
That's okay.
We do keep expanding it. It, as the title implies, it focuses on compensation and benefits. And we have added the DEIA work as part of that. So we are open to requests to expand the scope of the survey. So let's keep talking.
And I think because of time, Wendy, you were going to just give the last wrap up for some resources and how some people who are on the call may choose to purchase the survey if they don't have it already, and sort of some of the nuances and incentives that we do for that. So I want to give you a minute for that, and then I think we could wrap up, right?
Sure. Yes, Helen, I don't know if you can share the second to the last slide, or if we can't share slides anymore, we can post the link from slide 21 is the link on how you can request your report. So we have, if you go to visionservealliance.org, we have a page, a press release for this year's survey, and there is a form at the very bottom where you can just fill out the form to request your survey. And the fee for the survey, if you were one of the survey respondents, this is a free, you get it for free. This is a $600 value that you get for free. So it's free for VSA, NIB, and NAEPB members. Now, if you are a VSA, an NIB, or an NAEPB member, but you didn't complete the survey, you're going to get it for $300, which is half price, the $600 standard rate. And if you're not yet a member, you would have to pay for the full rate. But the good news is, why not become a member and get the survey for free? So this is a really great member benefit. I mean, our tier 1 folks, their dues are $500. You're going to pay $500 and boom, you get the survey for free. So you've more than paid for your dues just by joining Vision Serve Alliance. So there are so many other benefits that you get by being part of Vision Serve Alliance, but this is a really great one that you get just for being a member and being part of this professional community. So I'm not sure if Helen was able to share that. If not, you can easily find that link to that to order the survey just by going to visionservealliance.org.
I wasn't able to share that, but I'll drop that link in here real quickly. And then also we will be sending this out with the recording. So you will have all of this information as well. We'll send out a link to be able to order that.
Terrific. So I want to just thank everybody. It was nice to come off the webinar mode and see everybody, people who we know, active members, new folks. So I'm just glad that people were here. I hope the information was helpful. All right, so I will just say that we're just a couple minutes over. I think we covered a lot of information. Thank you for the questions. Thanks for your attendance. Really, really terrific to see you all. And